Hello, welcome to HITC Sports. So, with all this talk of the Premier League season maybe being cancelled, made void, redundant, deleted from history mid-March, for most that would be a complete and utter disaster. For some like Karen Brady, it would be Christmas come early. Let's go and find every Premier League club and what season they'd have loved to have seen cancelled on the 13th of March. Yeah, for this video, we're all Karen Brady. I guess I should probably start waxing my mustache. Arsenal 18-19. Listen, there are many seasons Arsenal fans would love to have cut short, if only to spare themselves some pain. I've half a mind to pick the back end of the 05-06 season, considering losing a Champions League final to a dodgy offside probably melted the brains of a lot of Arsenal fans, but that season did result in a bittersweet farewell to Highbury, so no. Instead, let's go for the 18-19 campaign. Top four was there, it was within their grasp, and yet Arsenal fans instead watched Unai Emery self-implode. 4 defeats in 5 games, conceding 9 goals across 3 matches against Crystal Palace, Wolves and Leicester, forfeiting top 4 by a point. And if that wasn't enough, cancelling the season would have saved Arsenal fans an 18-hour round trip to the backyards of Azerbaijan to watch them get pummeled in Europa League final by a club who lived just 3 miles up the road. What a pointless journey that must have been. Aston Villa 09-10. I know most of you would assume I'd put in the Aston Villa relegation season from 2016, but trust me lads, that club was like a dying rat who needed to be put out of its misery. That relegation was a long time coming, and another season on the top flight would have done nothing. Instead, it would have just prolonged the pain. Now, instead, the 09-10 campaign. Sure, Villa finished 6th for a 3rd season running, but don't get it wrong, it was an end-of-season meltdown. Martin O'Neill and co shouldn't be applauded for merely getting Europe for a 3rd season running. No, this was them passing up a realistic and attainable shot at the Champions League. After a strong 2/3 of the season, March onwards consisted of just 5 wins in 11 games. I'm sorry, but if you're going for top 4, you don't lose 7-1 to Chelsea. There were home defeats to Blackburn, home draws to Wolves and Sunderland. The club needed just 7 points to pip Spurs into 4th. It was there for them. Watching this 4th place bid slowly crumble into dust as Emil Heskey repeatedly fluffed his lines up front, oh, it must have been infuriating to watch. Bournemouth 19-20. Yeah, for Bournemouth, just cancel the season now. Because right now, you look destined for the drop. 2 wins in your last 12 games. Woefully out of form. Big players not performing. Christ, end it now. Because that's the only way you're going to be in the top flight come 2021. Brighton 19-20. Again, pretty simple here. Brighton are probably one of the few clubs who wouldn't mind the season being cancelled now. Simply put, every season this club stays up is a roaring success for the Seagulls. Yeah, they played decent stuff on the Graham Potter, but they're perilously perched 2 points above the drop zone. Just hit the reset button, alright? And then congrats. There's your 4th season of Premier League football. Burnley 14-15. Well, if we'd cancelled football back in March 2015, it would have preserved another season in the top flight for Burnley. Yeah, he did unfortunately lead them to relegation during the 14-15 campaign. Had they been granted a reprieve, another season in the Premier League, Dyche might have then laid their foundations for mid-table success. They might not needed to endure the pain of relegation. He could have persuaded Danny Ings and Kieran Trippier to stay, instead of ending up on the benches of top 4 clubs. Chelsea 07-08. Cutting a Chelsea season short, it's hard to find one, considering they usually end up with a trophy at the end of it. So let's go for that trophy-less season under Mr. Personality Avram Grant. They ended up 2nd best in almost every competition they competed in. Ending the season in March, they'd have been spared the pain of missing out on Premier League glory by 2 points, the embarrassment of watching their title bid ended in the last minute by Emil Heskey. Good lord, they wouldn't have had to watch their club captain cost them a Champions League final by botching his penalty. Maybe then John Terry wouldn't have become the biggest meme of 2008. While John Terry's tears were delightfully licked up by the rest of the world, for Chelsea fans it was probably like watching their kid crying. Something I'd imagine is pretty horrible for every parent. Maybe not just a Fritzl. For Christ's sake, Chelsea fans would probably have ended the week at the start of March, so they wouldn't have had to put up with an FA Cup exit at Barnsley. Actually, go back another month. They wouldn't have had to lose a League Cup final to Spurs. Actually, just cancel the season in September. Then they might have kept on to Jose Mourinho instead of being coached by Jabba the Hutt. Frank Lampard would be allowed time to grieve properly for the death of his mother, without the added pressure of Champions League finals. Oh yeah, and by delaying Euro 2008, they wouldn't have been tricked into buying Russian star but massive Chelsea flop Yuri Zurkov. Crystal Palace 04-05. It's mental to think that Crystal Palace haven't been relegated from any division in 15 years. In that time, a similar sized club like Norwich have gone down 5 times. Every season where they managed to stay up is a success. So in terms of ending a season short, I guess the 04-05 campaign, where they got relegated on the final day of the season. Everton 16-17. Let's be honest, Everton fans probably wish they could have pressed the reset button after just 2 months of the 16-17 season. Despite the billionaire takeover and big money signings, they still found themselves in a relegation battle and forced to call on Big Sam Allardyce. That club spent the summer signing a bunch of technical number 10s, and here they were watching Big Sam turn them into a pack of Glen Whelans. Christ, the football was dreadful. Just reset it. Midway through March, end the season and start again, good lord. Leicester 16-17. Well, we all know what the worst season to pull the plug on Leicester would be. How about the best? How about the 16-17 campaign? The season would have ended just 2 days after beating Sevilla at home in the Champions League last 16. But fine, it would have spared the reigning champions of England an embarrassing end-of-season meltdown under Craig Shakespeare. Shipping forward Everton 6 at home to Spurs, getting dumped out of a Champions League quarter-final just ended. Had the FA just pressed the reset button on football, Leicester could have had another crack at the Champions League the following season. Liverpool 12-13. Now the likes of Steven Gerrard would probably demand the back end of the 13-14 Liverpool campaign be wiped from existence, if only to preserve his last few morsels of dignity. But let's be smart about this, alright, and go for the previous season, when the Reds finished 7th in Brendan Rodgers' first year in charge. Had it ended after a 3-2 home win over Spurs in early March, then sure, alright, Jamie Carragher's emotional goodbye wouldn't have been on the Anfield pitch, but instead on goddamn Skype, no doubt after hurling spit in a little girl's face. The season petered out to a dud for the Reds with 4 wins in their final 9 games, but think about it. There would be no 2-2 draw with Chelsea. Luis Suarez wouldn't have had to use Branislav Ivanovic as a makeshift ham sandwich, and then he wouldn't have been suspended for 8 games, including the first 5 of next season. Do you see where I'm going with this? I have no doubt that if Suarez was available, the Reds would have then picked up all 3 points against Swansea and then Southampton. Are you telling me he wouldn't have turned Dejan Lovren's career into soggy wet cabbage? And so 9 months later, Stevie G could have slipped to his heart's desire. Go on, go for it. Spend that afternoon making the Anfield turf your own private slip and slide. It wouldn't matter because they'd have been 4 points better off and would have still won the league. So yeah, never mind pointing the finger at Gerrard. It was Suarez feasting on human flesh that cost that club their first Premier League title. Man City 12-13. Let's see, the best season to pull the plug for Man City. Let's go for the 12-13 campaign. One of the few recent years they finished trophyless. Had the campaign been called quits after 28 games, it would have prevented 3 league defeats as they tumbled to second in the league, but most of all, the fans wouldn't have been forced to put up with the embarrassment of losing an FA Cup final to Wigan. Man United 13-14. Unquestionably the David Moyes era during the 13-14 campaign. Right, ended in mid-March. Then the fans wouldn't be forced to put up with a week from hell. 3-0 home defeats to both Liverpool and Man City. Steven Gerrard smashing home 2 penalties and kissing the camera. Patrice Evra's arch enemy getting on the score sheet. Edin Dzeko using the Old Trafford turf as his own brand of private toilet paper. Furthermore, there were defeats against Everton and Sunderland, and a Champions League quarter-final exit for good measure. Listen, don't worry, alright, David Moyes would probably still have been given the boot. I mean, even after 28 games, they were 6th in the league and just lost to Olympiacos. But with the 2014 World Cup then moved ahead to 2015, the fans wouldn't have had to sit through the mind-numbing Louis van Gaal era, and instead, during the summer of 2014, might have appointed their second choice Jurgen Klopp instead. Then where would they be? Probably top of the pile. Newcastle 04-05. Listen, I am tempted to choose the relegation season of 2016. Yes, football would have been cancelled 2 days after Rafa Benitez's appointment. But good, he wouldn't have had to fight a relegation battle that wasn't his. The club could have been refreshed and prepared for another crack at the Premier League with an internationally proven winner. Who knows, he could have convinced the likes of Gini Wijnaldum and Andros Townsend to stay. But no, I'm not going to go for this one, alright? Instead 04-05 campaign. One of the worst ends to a season in living memory. The very epitome of car crash meltdown. In March 2005, Santiago Laurent Robert had just banged home a free kick winner against Liverpool as they wedged themselves into the top half and the latter stages of 2 cup competitions. And then it all collapsed. They won just 1 of their final 10 league games, including a 3-0 loss to Villa with 3 players sent off, including 2 for fighting with each other on the pitch. The UEFA Cup quarter-final ended in a 4-1 second leg implosion against Sporting Lisbon, before a painful FA Cup semi-final defeat by the same scoreline against Man United. The spring of 2005 was rough. Norwich 19-20. Pretty simple for Norwich. They'd probably be happy for this season to be cold. It's the only way they're going to stay up. Sheffield United 06-07. Yeah, the end of season running from hell. In early March 2007, Neil Warnock had the Blades 12th in the league and 11 points clear of West Ham. And then Carlos Tevez wakes up. The Hammers, who'd won 0 of the last 11 games, suddenly win 9 of the last 11. It was title-winning form. Sheffield United, by contrast, lost 6 of the last 9, getting relegated on the last day of the season by a penalty from David Unsworth, someone they'd spat off their bench to Wigan just 4 months earlier. Christ, what a nightmare. Southampton 04-05. Again, let's go back to the 04-05 campaign. The Saints finished up that season with 5 defeats in the last 8 games, including a 4-1 defeat at Fratton Park before getting relegated on the final day of the season. I'm convinced, had they been granted a reprieve, told to start again, and yeah, give Harry Redknapp a full transfer window, let him drag in the Canoes, Nico Krankers and Jermaine Defoe's, and suddenly he'd be bringing mid-table solidarity and FA Cup success to the Saints, not Portsmouth. Tottenham 11-12. Only one answer here. I can only imagine how painful this must have been for a Spurs fan. Slowly watching their Champions League bid decade crumbled into thin air. Let's be honest, during the spring of 2012, Harry Redknapp was understandably distracted by England talk ahead of the Euros and his legal battles, in which we found out he couldn't read. In early March, the club were 3rd in the league and 10 points clear of Arsenal. And then, starting to 1 win in 6 games, stumbling to 4th in the league, and then watching Didier Drogba's penalty in Munich consign them to Thursday Night Football, seeing Chelsea of all teams deprive them of the Champions League. It must have been like stabbing your toe with a fork. Watford 18-19. It is pretty simple. The back end of last season, distracted by the FA Cup, Javi Gracia led Watford to 5 defeats in the final 8 league games, and then bang, 6-0 defeat at Man City in the FA Cup final. I am convinced it was this end of season slump which battered their morale, and that's the reason they started so poorly and are now in a relegation battle. West Ham 02-03. Remember when West Ham went down with 42 points in 2003? Because of this relegation, look at the talent that club were forced to flog. Wolves 11-12. If ever a season needed to be deleted, it was this one. Christ, it was patently obvious. Terry Connor was out of his depth. There was no way he was going to keep that club up. Just press reset, spend the summer bringing in someone like Tony Pulis, and then maybe then they wouldn't have ended up relegated to League One. Anyway, that's the end of it, guys. Let me know, what do you think? What was the season you'd have liked to see cancelled in mid-March? Let me know in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And as always, I'll talk to you in a while.